All right, welcome back, guys. So in this video, let's go ahead and start tackling that shipping form. So I'm going to open up my front end, source, containers, and then checkout.js. This is where we're going to be working in this video. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my use state because I'm going to have some form data and then I want to have state that I manage. So I'm also going to have a return here and then wrap this return in curly braces so that way I can have some logic. Then I'm just going to indent this over. And then I'm going to have const form data and then set form data, which is going to be equal to use state. And then it's going to be an object. Then here I'm going to have my different form fields, which are going to be for my shipping form, as well as for that first name input and that email input. So I'm going to have first name, which by default is going to be an empty string. Then I'm going to have the email. And then I'm going to have street address, city, country, state, province, and then the postal zip code. So I'm going to have street address here, and then the city, and then the country, and then state, province, and then finally the postal zip code. So there we are. This is going to be our form data. Then the next thing I want to do is destructure these fields, which are going to be coming from my form data. That's going to be all these fields here. So to make this easier, I'm just going to copy these and paste them here. I'm going to select this part, do a Command D a couple times to select all of them, delete, and then just put a comma and to make sure it's like this. There we go. So now all these fields are destructured. Then the next thing I want to do is have an onChange. So I'm going to do const onChange, which will take an event, do my set form data. I'm going to have spread operator on form data. And then I'm going to have my e.target.name, which will be set to e.target.value. So e.target.name is going to be one of these values that I'm changing. And then I have the spread operator here so that whichever field I'm adjusting, the rest get untouched. So e.target.name is going to be one of these values. e.target.value is going to be whatever's being put inside of the input. Now on top of this, with this value, so I'm going to use this onChange for the first name and the email. And then I want to make sure that you can't have spaces in here. So another thing I'm going to add to this is to this value dot replace. Then I'm going to have a regular expression where I have a space and then a set of empty quotes. And then this way I replace any space character with an empty character. And then this is how I can remove those spaces. And then below this, I'm going to have a const on address change, which is going to be very similar to this one. So I'm just going to copy this part and then paste. And then the only thing that's different is I'm not going to have this replace part. So I'm just going to have it like so. So the full line is going to be const on address change, take the event, set the form data. Then we're going to have the spread operator on form data and change one of these e.target.names, which is going to be one of these values, to the e.target.value, which is whatever we put in the input. So now let's start working on this return part. So first thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of styling to this h1 tag, and I can also close that side window. I'm going to have a class name. Then here I'm going to put display-4 to make the text larger. I'm going to put some margin at the top and bottom. Then I'm going to have a div with a class name of row. And I'm also going to have some margin at the bottom on this one. And then I'm going to have a div with a class name of call-5. And then I'm going to have another column. And then this column here is going to be a call-6. And I'm also going to have an offset. So I'm going to do offset-1. So this way, this column is going to be a little smaller, this one a little larger. So this is where I'm going to have those order details. So I'll put a little note here. And then this is where I'm going to have my shipping form and then that Braintree drop-in UI. So now let's start putting this form together. So I'm going to have a form with a class name. And then here, I'm actually going to have some styling outside of here that I'm going to add. So I'm going to have const form styling, which is going to be equal to order attempted. So this is going to be a piece of state I create. So at the top, or I guess right below here, I'll do const order attempted, set order attempted, which by default is going to be false. So I'm going to check if an order was attempted. And if that's the case, I'm going to have the Bootstrap class of needs validation was validated. Otherwise, I'm just going to have this needs validation class. So this way, if the user went to submit, but something was wrong, we're going to have this was validated, and then that's going to have that styling on those inputs where it's either green with that like check mark if things are okay, or red if things are not okay. And then I can pass this form styling in here like so. And then the next thing I want to pass to this form is no validate, and then an on submit, which is going to be a function we're going to work on later, which I'm going to call by. And then I can put that right here, const by. And for now, I'm just going to have it like so. Then the next thing I'm going to do is have an h3, the class name with some margin at the bottom, display-6. So it's going to be a little smaller than this display-4, and it's just going to say your information. Then below here, I'm going to have a div with a class name of form-group, and then some margin at the bottom. And then here I'm going to have my label and my input. So this first one's going to be for the first name. So I'm going to have a label where it's going to say first name with a star to indicate that this is a required field. And then I'm going to style this with form-label. Then I'm going to have an HTML4, which is going to be first underscore name. And then I'm going to make my input. And then this input is going to be styled with form-control. Then I'm going to have a type of text. It's going to have a name of first underscore name. It's going to have a placeholder of first name with a star. Then I'm going to pass my on change like so. And then the event's going to be passed onto this automatically. And then it's going to be utilizing this one here, which is going to replace any space character with an empty character. And then below this on change, I'm going to have my value, which is first name. So that's what I destructured from the form data. And then I'm going to set this to be required. Then the next thing I'm going to do is below this input, I'm going to have a div with a class name of invalid feedback, which is going to say, please enter your first name. So if you try to submit the form and you didn't enter anything inside of this input, then this here is going to display in red text to indicate to the user that they have to enter their first name. And then this should also say invalid. So now to make my next form group a little easier, which is the one for the email, I'm just going to copy this one. And then below here, I'm going to paste it. And then this is going to be for my email. So in this case, we're going to have a type of email. The HTML4, the name, and the value are all going to be email. The placeholder is going to be email. The on change is going to be this on change here. It's going to be required. And then if anything ends up being invalid, we're going to say, please enter your email. So that's going to be our email field. The next one's going to be the street address. And to make this easier, once again, I'm going to copy this one, this entire form group, and paste right below it. So this is going to be for our street address. And then for the HTML4, we're going to have street underscore address. I'm going to copy this part because we're going to have the same thing in the name and the same thing in the value. And then instead of this on change here, we're going to have on address change, which is this right over here, which is not going to be replacing these space characters. And then this one's going to be a type of text. Here I'm going to have street address for the placeholder. This is going to be required. And then for the invalid feedback, it's going to say, please provide address. Now the next form field is going to be the city. Now let's just take a look at what this looks like so far. And I have to make sure I'm running my front end. So I'm going to navigate into my front end, do an npm run start. And let's take a look at what this looks like thus far, just so that we see where we're progressing. And then one thing I have to do when I'm using hooks is make sure that this right here has a capital C. That's just something with React. So I'm going to have checkout with a capital C. So let's now take a look at what this looks like. And it looks pretty nice so far. So we have our checkout page header. We have your information, and we have our first input fields. And we should be able to type in these. And if I put a space, there we go, it gets removed. And here I can't put any spaces. And then here I should be able to, and there we go. So far, so good. Let's go back down. So now for my city, to make this easier, I'm going to copy this form group, paste right below. And this one's going to be for my city. So I'm going to change both the placeholder and the label to be city. I'm going to copy this part, do a Command D twice, change this to city. This is going to be on address change. And then this is just going to, for the invalid feedback, be please provide city. And then our next fields are going to be the country, the state province, and the postal zip code. So for these, I'm going to have on another row. So right below this form group, I'm going to have a div with the class name of row. I'm going to have some margin at the bottom, margin at the top. Then I'm going to have a div with the class name of call-5. This is going to be where I'm going to have my country. Then I'm going to have two more columns. So the next one's going to be a call-4. And then the last one's going to be a call-3. So this one's going to be a little larger, this one a little smaller, and then this one's going to be the smallest. So let's put together this one right here. So to make this easier, I'm just going to copy this form group and paste it in here. And then the label is going to be country. And then here, instead of having the input, I'm going to have a select tag. So I'm going to do select, and then I'm going to have some options. So the first one's going to be an empty string like so. It's going to say choose. So that's going to be the invalid option. Then I'm going to have an option where the value is Canada. Then the text is going to be Canada. And then this one's going to be for the United States. And this one's going to be United_States. And then I'm going to pass a couple things to this select tag as properties. So I'm going to have a class name, which is going to be form-select is going to style this. It's going to have a name of country. It's going to have an on change, which is going to be that on address change. It's going to have a value of country, and it's going to be set to be required. And then here it's going to say, please provide country if anything's invalid. So our next form field is going to be a text input field, which is going to be for the state province. So I'm just going to copy this form group here because it's going to be similar to this. And then I'm going to paste inside of this call-4. So this one's going to be for my state/province. And then here for the placeholder, I'm also going to have state/province. Then I'm going to select the city part, select both of these, and then it's going to be state_province. And then right here for the invalid feedback, I'm going to have please provide state/province. So that's going to be this one here. And then my final one's going to be that postal zip code. So I'm just going to copy this because it's going to be a text input field as well. So paste in here. And then for the label, I'm just going to put zip code. And then same thing for the placeholder, just because it's going to be a smaller width for this input field. So I'm going to copy this part, or not copy it, but select it, and then paste zip code in here. And then I'm going to select the state province, select both of these as well, and then do postal__zip code. And then here, if it's invalid, I'm going to put please provide postal/zip code. And then underneath this div here, because this one right here is for this row of the 3 different input fields that we have. So below this div, the next thing I'm going to do is put an H3 with the class name of margin bottom -5, display -6, and this is going to say payment information. So below here is where I'm going to have that logic for the drop-in UI. So I'm not going to implement that in this video. We're going to implement that in a later video, but I'm just going to have this so I know where to put it. And then we're also going to have our submit button. So I'm just going to make that now. It's going to be a button that says place order. And then I'm going to set a class name to this, which is going to be button, button-success, button large, margin at the top, and I'm going to put this shadow class to give this button a shadow. And then I'm going to put this on a separate line because I'm going to pass some more stuff to this. So I'm going to have an on click. So when I click this button, what I'm going to do is have an arrow function, which does set order attempted to true. And then I'm going to have a type of submit. So the set order attempted to true, what that's going to do is, if you remember previously, we had this form styling. So when this is true, we're going to have this was validated added to this needs validation. And that's going to be applied to this form. So then we're going to have these appropriate stylings with the validation happening on our shipping form. All right, so now let's take a look at what this looks like. So we have our first name, email, street address, city, and then the country, which we can select here. We have the province and then the zip code. So if, let's say, I enter my name, place order. So one thing I have to do just to make sure that this doesn't happen, what just happened was go into my by, pass the event, and do an e.prevent default. That way the page doesn't refresh like we saw there. Let's now try that again. So I'm going to pass in the name Bryan, place order, and now we see all this validation happening. So here we can see, please enter your email, please provide address. So this is because we put that on click on here, and then we applied that was validated styling. So now if I do brian@gmail.com, there we go, that's valid. Now I can input something in here. I can input something here. And then I can do something like Ontario, put the postal code here. And then here I have to choose something as well. And if I go back to this, we'll see once again, it's like so. If I remove my name, we see this right here. So perfect. Our shipping form is now in order. So I'm going to go ahead and put a pause in this video. And in the next video, we're going to start putting together our logic for generating that Braintree token and showing that drop in UI. So we're going to see how to do that in our next video. So see you guys there.